In working with hundreds of entrepreneurs who are going from idea to users with their no-code apps, we've learned there are 3 things that tend to get overcomplicated really easily. Today, I'm going to help you simplify. Now, make sure you stick around until the end because each of these 3 components is important at different stages with your app's development and launch. So stick around for that. Now, first, if you're new around here, my name is Kristen, and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No-Code Apps, where we help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to either start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding and with no technical background required. So today we're going to talk about these 3 different components that entrepreneurs tend to overcomplicate. And by doing so, they expand their development timeframes, they delay their apps launches, and ultimately they just make it harder for themselves to grow and scale their apps after they do launch. And I want to help you avoid all of that. So we're going to go through this step by step. And what I'm going to do is share my screen here. We're going to jump over to the whiteboard and we're going to go through this. So 3 different stages or 3 different components that get really overcomplicated. Number 1 is the planning stage. Okay, now this sounds simple, but stick with me. The planning stage. I want to ask you, how long have you been planning, researching, thinking about your app without actually having something you can bring users on board, or without actually making real progress with your app's development? Now, don't feel bad if it's been a long time, because that's very common. And it's because the planning stage with an application can get really complicated really easily. Okay, now with the entrepreneurs who we personally work with, this is one of the first things that we touch on, because in order to efficiently and correctly launch and scale your app, you have to start with the right roadmap, okay, with the right plan. And this plan should incorporate a number of different things that take into account your specific app, your target market, your specific priorities, your goals, and all these different things, okay? But the reason why the planning stage can get so overcomplicated is because we find that entrepreneurs are trying to plan for their 100th step with their app, their 100th step with the business, their 200th, 300th step, before they actually take the first 1, 5, or 10 steps to even get to that point. Okay, so a plan becomes very overwhelming. Okay, and really it just leads to a lot of procrastination when this happens. Okay, when you're thinking about step 100, but you have not gotten to step 10 yet, you are going to feel overwhelmed. And that overwhelm and that just complication, the complexity with trying to figure that out is going to lead you to procrastinate. Now, procrastination can look, it can be sneaky in that it feels like you're still planning, okay? When you're trying to plan that 100th step, okay, and you're continuing with your planning for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, 2 years, I've seen that and more. That is planning procrastination, okay? You cannot effectively plan your 100th step until you take your first 10, because those first 10 are going to help you gauge what the next 100 steps need to even look like in the first place. Okay, so in reality, your plan should focus on a contained set of aspects. All right, so number 1, it needs to focus on the immediate problem that you are solving, the immediate problem. Okay, that's important. Not the 10th problem, the 20th problem, right? Because there's lots of problems you could solve. Your initial plan and roadmap needs to focus on the immediate problem, the immediate outcome, and the immediate solution. Okay. The problem is the thing that you're solving. The outcome is the thing that your app is enabling. The solution is your app. It's the processes that take someone from having a problem to being able to achieve an outcome. So you need to focus on the immediates, okay? Immediate problem, immediate outcome, immediate solution. This is something that we emphasize again and again with our own clients, because again, if you start trying to add a bunch of layers to the problem, the outcome, the solution, then what you're effectively doing is trying to build 5, 10 different apps all at once, or what could otherwise be 5 or 10 apps. You need to build the first one, and then you can expand on that. So you need to plan for the first one so that you don't experience the overwhelm and all the procrastination. Okay, you also need to look at the initial outreach channel. Okay. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who are trying to plan these massive marketing outreach undertakings before they have even taken the first step with their apps. Okay. And that is just a recipe for overwhelm and procrastination, because you really have to focus on, at least what we advise is, you really have to focus on the low-hanging fruit options so that you can move forward quickly with your app. Because one of the things that we want you to be able to do is launch early. Okay, we're not trying to give you a way to build this complete full scope app with this, grand opening type of marketing scheme that is going to take you years to execute on. No, you're looking to leverage no-code tools so that you can create a business that allows you to transition into a different lifestyle, a different career path. You're not looking to take over the internet, at least not right now. Okay, and so in order to do that quickly, there are some things that you can do that will help you move forward without overcomplicating your plan. And one of those things is just focusing on the initial outreach channel. We call these your default users with our own clients. Okay, and the other thing that you really need to plan on are the right features to bring these two things together. Okay, so you have the problem, the outcome, the solution. You have the specific type of person who you're reaching out to first. Now we have to have the right features in place from a technical standpoint to bring those two things together. Okay, that's what your plan should focus on. That's what your roadmap should focus on. Yes, it's going to expand as you go. It should evolve, it should change, because when you start with a plan that's contained like this, it's going to allow you to get feedback really, really quickly, within weeks, if you actually put it to use. And because of that, you can now start evolving your plan in the right way. So instead of overcomplicating your plan and guessing on what that 100th step should be, you can actually be taking the most immediate steps that are going to lead you there and show you what it should be. Okay, so as much as you want to plan and plan and plan, remember, do not overcomplicate this, because moving forward quickly and efficiently is going to depend on that. Okay, now the next step, do not overcomplicate your build. Okay, this is something that we see again and again and again and again. And I understand 100%, because I will tell you, I used to do this too. I used to overcomplicate the build. I used to think that every single thing that I was building had to be perfect and optimized, and I had to implement every single strategy and tactic I knew into my first build in order to be successful. That was wrong. I learned that was very wrong. When you overcomplicate your build, you are looking at delays with your app naturally, because overcomplicating the build just requires spending a lot more time on it initially than you should be. And this is not something that a lot of people think about, but it leads to a lot of issues. And I'm talking about technical issues, bugs, errors, difficulty with testing. Okay, so what usually happens is, let's say, well, I was going to say, let's say you have that contained plan, but realistically, let's say you have you've gone the route of the overwhelming and the procrastination with your planning, which is normal, right? Let's say you've done that. And now you're trying to build on top of that, which is just going to lead you to an overcomplicated build because you're just building way too many things and making way too many assumptions and guesses way too early. Well, you're going to be spending the next year or more in development alone, all right, easily. And you could otherwise be spending weeks or just a few months, right? Our clients are rolling out their apps in just a few months, not a few years, which I do see happening. Okay, but beyond that, when you are building what could otherwise be, 3, 5, 10 different apps, realistically, you're trying to build that all at once. You're trying to take your version 1, and before bringing test users onto it, you're trying to go to version 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Well, you are just essentially planting seeds for so many issues to arise, because think about what the back end of your app would look like when it's that big and that overcomplicated. You're gonna have a really hard time when bugs happen, when issues come up, which they will, right? That's part of development. You're gonna have a really hard time figuring out where they're coming from. What we usually see happening when the build has become overcomplicated, we see rebuilds happening, right? And that is what we don't want for you. We don't want you backtracking and doing all that work and having to start over. So don't complicate your build, right? What you really want to do is you want to take your previous plan, right, that we just went over, and you want to take those contained features, those contained needs, and put them through a cycle where we start with the, see here, database, right? This is kind of like the foundation of your app. And then we look at the structure, right? The front end of your app's architecture. And then we really connect these with systems, all right? So like your workflows, the logic in the back end of your app. Okay, so we take your previous plan and we put it through this cycle: database, structure, systems connect the two. The back end of your app, the front end of your app, the systems connect both of those, okay? This creates a cleaner build that's a lot less overcomplicated because you're not dipping your hands into 10, 20 different features all at once. You're building in layers, which you should. It's going to make it easier for you as the developer. It's just going to create a more efficient app. Okay, so when you do this, it's going to pull back on those delays, right? You can launch your app within weeks, right? We have entrepreneurs launching their apps to users within weeks because they're not overcomplicating their builds, okay? So no overcomplicating the plan and no overcomplicating the build. Now, the last thing is your outreach. This is another area that gets way too overcomplicated. Okay, so outreach, meaning talking about your app, right? Bringing initial users onto your app, converting prospective users into test users, beta users, paying users, right? Outreach, okay? When this gets overcomplicated, what happens are, number one, stalls. And I mean stalls between the build and the outreach, okay? When this is overcomplicated, what we see happening is entrepreneurs, let's say they do build the first version of their apps. Well, if the outreach is overcomplicated, then oftentimes they might go months, a year, or more before they ever bring users onto the app that they've just built. And we don't want you to have, this streamlined plan, the streamlined build, but then fall flat on the other side because, right, you're just killing all of that momentum. And so you want to keep your outreach simple in the beginning too. Okay. And you can do this. You don't have to overcomplicate this. No matter how many different strategies and tactics you've read about online, you can create a really simple outreach plan that's effective and that works. Okay. So when this is overcomplicated, also leads to confusion for you on like really how to even bring users on board, and confusion for your users, why they should even come on board, right? So I'm going to give you an example. I have seen a number of entrepreneurs who have, and I've been guilty of this too, so I understand it, but I've seen a number of them who have read about a bunch of different tactics and strategies online. And so what they do is before they have any users, none at all, they create this, 10, 20 step optimized outreach plan and conversion plan for bringing users on board their apps. Okay. Now, once you already have your app and once you already have users on your app and once you have learned how to convert them in the first place in a way that works, then yes, adding on all of these tactical optimizations can work and that can help you. But if you do that before you ever even understand how to effectively bring users onto your app in the first place, then you are not going to know which tactic or optimization is working or not working. You have to have the base layer of data first, okay? What works? What works? Then optimize, okay? You have to have the base layer first in order to then optimize. If you start by optimizing, then you're optimizing for something that you are just completely guessing on. Okay, optimization only makes sense when you know what works at the base level. So when you are trying to optimize before you know what works, it's really confusing. It's confusing for you because now you're just guessing on a larger scale. And it's confusing for your users because it's just too many hoops to jump through for your very first round of onboarding. So there are really only a couple things that you need to focus on with your initial outreach. Okay, so I mentioned that default user channel. This is what we guide our own clients on, is using their default user channel. There are different default users depending on the type of app you're building, but really, just to simplify it, go after the lowest hanging fruit. Okay, go after the thing that is going to allow you to take the next step quickly. You don't have to optimize that thing 10, 20 times over, right? Just go after the thing that will allow you to move forward, and then you can optimize from there. Okay. The other thing that you really want to look at is goal-based outreach. Right? So what I often find happening with these really intricately designed outreach plans and tactics is there's really no rhyme or reason for why all these optimizations are in place. And in reality, there can't be, because if you don't have that base layer that you know works to start, there's not going to be a reason for having all these optimizations. But looking at it a little bit differently, you really want to break your outreach up into goals. So what is your very first lowest hanging fruit step that you're going to take with your outreach, right? What's the default channel you're going to be working within? Well, what's your most immediate goal by doing that? Okay, if you look at creating goal-based outreach, so specific goals, I want to achieve X number of conversions within this default channel by X date. Well, then you can do the things that allow you to accomplish that. And then you can see what works and what doesn't. And that's going to allow you to then take the next step in optimizing, and the next and the next and the next, right? But you have to break it down into separate goals. So let's say that you are doing email outreach. Well, you can't say, okay, I'm going to optimize my opt-in pop-up on my landing page and my explainer video if you don't first know how to get people over to that landing page or to click on the explainer video. Okay, so that's again thinking way too many steps ahead. Create goal-based outreach that's a lot more immediate. And when you do that, you are going to be able to have a simplified outreach plan that will pull together your initial roadmap, your build, and allow you to move forward with your app a lot earlier, a lot more effectively, and bringing users on board. And then you can kind of just go back through the cycle again as you expand. You adjust your roadmap, you adjust your build, and you evolve your outreach. Okay, so I hope this is helpful for you, because these three areas get way too overcomplicated. It's overwhelming, it takes forever, and it's really confusing. And you can simplify it. You can simplify it a lot by focusing on the things that we've gone over here today. Now, if you do find this helpful and you would like a more structured plan, build, process, more structured guidance, this is the stuff that we help our clients with every single day. And if you think it might be helpful for you to have something like this too, then you can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/apply, schedule a strategy call to chat with our team. We'll help you come up with your base roadmap so that you can move forward correctly with your app without overcomplicating everything. And then we'll guide you on the best ways to execute on that. So you can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/apply to chat further. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.